Good evening, I'm Daniel Michael with Valley Engineering. Just a couple comments. When this whole thing came up and we started working with the county staff, they've been great to work with. A lot of people stand up here and complain. Clap your hands. They've been wonderful. Back to the original, he showed the original master plan that was approved. And on the front page of that, there was a square box and it said proffers. And all the text for the proffers, but then it had that drawing that said a warehouse will go on this specific spot. That's all we're changing. We're not trying to change anything else. We will work with the adjacent property owners at the time that if there's an entrance that needs to come onto Botanical across the Valley Health property. The only concern that Valley Health's ever had is we are limited to 14,000 trips per day from the 104 acres that was originally rezoned. We just don't want any confusion that says, all right, if we give somebody else access to cross Old Valley Health property, that original 104 acres, that it impacts our traffic study. That's the only concern that we have. And I think we can work with staff and get through that. I don't have any issues with what they've done, and I appreciate what they've done. Does anybody else have any questions?
Any questions? Supervisor McCarthy?
Sure. You had mentioned that the hospital would work with the adjoining landowners, and then you brought up the matter of the traffic study. In my conversations with staff and the county attorney, I was assured that any traffic coming off of those other parcels not owned by the hospital would not impact those numbers. So that being said, you have a note on the generalized plan of development that says that entrance to Botanical Boulevard, entrance to commercial use area shall be granted by Winchester Medical Center. And you just mentioned that you will work with them. So is this just you shall have the right to access, or is there going to be some discussion between Winchester Medical Center on what constitutes your right to have access at some point in the future?
I don't think there's going to be any conversations on where it's going back and forth, but we want an entrance where you can't have one. It's not going to be that. It's going to be, the Virginia Department of Transportation has very specific guidelines. If you look, we have Route 50, and then we go up to that first cul-de-sac on the drawing. So you only have so much distance in there. There's VDOT requirements that says how far I have to be away from those intersections before I can put another entrance in. That'll determine where the entrance goes.
So you have a notation on the generalized plan of development. There's no actual verbiage in the proffer itself directly to that point. Would your client have any opposition to having specific language in the proffers reiterating that point?
Was it covered in the proffers? We can check that. I have no issue. What I would ask is the generalized plan of development. Is that part of the proffers?
It is, but
it is in some jurisdictions, and that's why I'm asking.
My understanding is that it is, but my concern is, it says very clearly that access shall be granted, but you've stated that they would work with Winchester Medical Center. So I'm trying to figure out, what are they working on with Winchester Medical Center?
Like we would work with them to go back through to VDOT and say, all right, they couldn't come and say, all right, I want to go in 150 feet in off of Route 50 and put an entrance in. We would work with them, but you can't put one there. You got to move farther away by VDOT standards.
I guess I would feel better about this proffer if we had specific language in the proffer statement itself that specifically said that these folks shall have access granted within certainly the realm of VDOT's requirements, but that they shall have that reiterated. I would feel a little bit better knowing that your client actually means what it says there by putting that into that statement. So that would be goodwill on their part to show, yes, we do mean that we shall give them that. If they put it in the proffer statement itself, I would say then, I could get behind something like this.
Okay.
Supervisor Day.
First of all, I'd like to go and reiterate what Supervisor McCarthy said. In the proper statement you have before us, it says that the interchange, talking about the I-7 3750 interchange, when traffic generation from the 102-acre site exceeds 14,000, TBD. And I've had a conversation with staff today, long meeting, and their interpretation of that is that it affects only the traffic that's generated by the medical center. It does not generate anything on any adjacent landowner, etc. Is that your interpretation as well? And let me phrase this. Does the applicant agree that that is the interpretation as stated here in the proffer, but I've heard verbally a different comment from your attorney. So that's why I'm asking the question.
It says that the 102 acres, actually
It says the 102 acres site, which is the original 102 acre site.
and at 14,000 trips per day. The concern that we had was it says from, it refers back to the original outline of that parcel. So if the adjacent property owner comes in and crosses, if they purchase some property from Valley Health to put their entrance in, does that little sliver of land constitute traffic from property that is bound by the 14,000 trips per day? And that's what they were saying, no. And I agree with that.
We can.
What?
John Bishop might be able to help us.
We had a conversation.
I don't think so.
Our staff believes that traffic from adjacent properties does not affect the 14,000 trips per day.
And that's perfect. That's wonderful.
And I want to make certain, though, that your client agrees that that is the case, because verbally, I've been told that your client has said that it does. So we're trying to have a clear understanding of what is and is not that 14,000. And talking to staff today, and they can make their own comments if they so choose, that 14,000 is only for traffic that is generated on that property, not on any other adjacent property.
Okay. Then we are in agreement with that.
Okay.
And just so you know, we're working on a site plan right now for a large building over on that west campus. And I actually did it myself today. We have the ambulatory surgery center over there. We have the hotel and the building that we're proposing. And I worked on the thing that's going to go on our site plan. We're going to call it a trip generation summary. And I used the IT manual and I said, all right, this is the hotel. The hotel over there has 136 rooms. They generate, I forget, 800 and some trips per day. We have the ambulatory surgery center. It generates this many. Our use that we're going to be submitting on in the near future generates this many. That came in just under 3,000 trips per day. So it's the site plan's going to show we're allowed 14 and we're up to 3,000 now.
And by the same token, as Mr. McCarthy stated, there is a buffer zone.
Yes.
From Route 50 going north, which is on the left-hand side of Botanical. And so your client is agreeing in this proffer, I'm just asking the question, that a entrance can be done with no further approval by your client, that they can have an entrance, as is stated in the proffer. I think it's one entrance into the adjacent landowners going north on Botanical, correct?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Just to clarify something, you mentioned something that sort of piqued my interest. You mentioned if someone were to purchase an entrance onto Botanical from Winchester Medical Center, this says that it shall be granted, not that it shall be sold. Is it the intention of Winchester Medical Center to sell an entrance or access point to an adjacent landowner, or is it their intention to grant access across their property to Botanical?
A right of way, in other words.
I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just being honest. I could say from the people I know there and the people I've worked with, if the adjacent owner come in and said that we want to put an entrance here, and you need to give the land, 50-foot wide strip for a right of way, if I was in the meetings with them, I would say just give it to them.
Thank you.
Other questions, anyone? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we kind of got off track.
That's what they want.
So we were in discussion.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Mr. McCarthy.
Supervisor McCarthy.
Mr. Chairman, I would ask that we postpone this discussion to get an answer to my question with regard to whether the hospital intends to sell an access or grant an access. And the reason I say that is I think there's an awful lot of leverage that can be wielded with this idea of it said here, we proffer that we will grant access. But if it's to be sold, I could say, pay me $2 billion and I will give you the access I promised to grant. So I think there's too much wiggle room there, a lot of power that can be wielded against the property owners that are adjacent. So I'm not comfortable moving forward with this proffer amendment until we get that aspect of it worked out.
Okay, so you're proposing,
My motion is to postpone.
your motion to amend is to postpone.
Do we have a motion? We don't have a motion yet,
You had
sir.
a motion. We were in discussion.
No, we were in the public hearing aspect of it.
I don't think there was motion.
We're still in the public hearing portion. Public hearing.
You were in discussion,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah, but no motion had been
We were
made.
in discussion.
Motion and you're not in public hearing.
There was no motion.
Close the public hearing, but there's been no motion according to the.
Do what?
It doesn't require a public
You
hearing.
might as well have to speak up, because,
There was not a public hearing, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry?
There was not a public hearing for this item. It was a matter of proper revision, so there was no public
We
hearing.
had not held the public hearing.
Right.
There is no requirement to hold one.
But there is no motion yet on the floor. My motion was the first motion.
Okay, all right. Is everybody okay and comfortable that that is where we ended up? All right, so I'll take the blame for that one. We have a motion to postpone for a period of time.
A second.
I would postpone until we get an answer to that question presented to staff.
I think we'd be better off to give them a time frame.
The next Board of Supervisors meeting.
Is that gonna be enough?
But could you just state your,
My motion is to postpone any action on this matter until we get an answer to the question of, is Valley Health, Winchester Medical Center granting access without any type of remuneration and without any other further oversight of what the development would be on the adjacent properties? Or are they anticipating asking for some type of consideration in return for the grant of access to the property? Until we get an answer to that question, I'd like to postpone action on this.
I would second it.
And a second, you mentioned the next meeting.
To the next meeting.
Did you intend to include that in your
Yes, I
motion?
did, sir.
Okay, you're comfortable that that was his intention? And gentlemen, you comfortable with the next meeting? Thank you, sir. Further discussion? Anyone? This is not a public hearing?
No.
it's a minor amendment, so there was no.
Okay, that's the reason, okay. Well, I'm good with that. All right, we're all finished. Motion is to postpone until the next meeting, until we get an answer.
Let's vote.
We good? We're gonna vote. So Supervisor Graber,
Aye.
Supervisor Dunn,
Aye.
Supervisor Wells, Supervisor Slaughter,
Aye.
Supervisor McCarthy, Supervisor Fisher.
Aye.
Chair votes aye and the motion carries. All right, ordinance